Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be walking our way through each step of the constructed response format. As you know, in 10th grade, you take the literature keystone in May, and so most of our writing this year is going to focus on perfecting these constructed responses and adding a bit more to it than what you would have done in 9th grade. So we have a constructed response format packet that, as you can see here, is housed in the constructed response folder in Schoology. And in this format packet has everything you need. It takes you step by step, starting with step 1, step 2 of the required things that you need to have in a constructed response. There are some new things that we're going to add this year, but we're going to talk about that today. Secondly, you can refer to this constructed response format packet anytime this year when you write a constructed response. You essentially can have this quote cheat sheet out to help. Now, the more comfortable you get with writing, eventually you're not even going to need to reference this. But this is a tool that you can use all year and will stay in Schoology all year. So as you can see, in front of you is exactly what you will see in your constructed response format packet in the constructed response folder in Schoology. We are just looking at it on a slide in a PowerPoint. And so what this does is exactly every step from beginning to end that you need, that is required in a constructed response. So the reason why we go over each step is because this is what the state requires. It doesn't allow for a ton of creativity because it's so cut and dry with the format, but we can at least make what we write within that format good and deep and good analysis. So here we go. And again, as you see at the top, what you see on these slides, again, is in Schoology under Constructed Response Format Packet or Required Format. So before you begin writing, even before you start, right here, underline the verb in the prompt and understand what it's asking. So every single constructed response starts with the verb. Explain, describe, analyze, compare, compare and contrast. So once we look at that and we know what we're doing, that is good. If we have to describe, we know, okay, this whole thing, I need to describe something. So before I begin writing, I'm going to underline the verb in my prompt, okay? And then I'm going to break apart the prompt. So what are my buzzwords in the prompt? Maybe it says, analyze how the theme was portrayed in the story. So definitely my buzzword would be theme. So I've underlined the verb, I've broken apart the prompt. Now I'm ready to write. So step 1, my first sentence of my response should answer the question being asked. This is very simple because, take a look, many words from the prompt itself should be included in your first sentence. And we will take a look at that more in depth in a moment. So if I see theme and character and the title of the novel in my prompt, then I can pull most of those words from the prompt and actually put them in my answer. And again, we'll take a look at that. So step 2, I've answered my question. So step 2, I'm going to use a transition word. And again, we know what good transition words are. That's going to lead me into my first cited example from the text. And when I say cited example, that means it comes word for word for word from the text. Has quotation marks around it, page number, and we'll see that in action in just a moment. Step 3, now I need to explain what the cited evidence shows. So in step 2, I literally cited from the text. Step 3, I'm literally going to write this line from the text shows. Tell me what it shows. It shows how the character was feeling. It shows how the theme is being portrayed. It shows the tone. It shows the feelings of the character. You're literally going to write that. This line from the text shows. Step 4, this is something new. Thought bubbles. We have fiction and nonfiction thought bubbles. And these thought bubbles are located on the last 2 pages of your format packet in constructed response folder in Schoology. But we're going to look at the thought bubbles in just a minute. So your thought bubble, as you can see, should be based on the line that you just cited from the text. Let's recap so far. We've broken apart our prompts. We've underlined our verb. My first sentence, I've literally answered the question using many words from the prompt itself. I've used a transition word into my first cited example from the text. I've told my reader that this line from the text shows ... And then the new part here is the thought bubble. That comes immediately after your cited evidence and you tell me what it shows, and it's based solely on the line that you just cited. And we will take a look in just a moment. Bear with me. We're going to do the same thing all over again because we have to cite at least twice in a constructed response. So I'm going to use another transition word. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lead into my second cited example from the text, nice quotation marks, page number. I'm going to literally say what this evidence shows. This line from the text shows, illustrates, portrays, reveals. And then I'm going to include that thought bubble. And again, that thought bubble is based literally on that quote that I just brought in from the book. And finally, I came full circle. I'm going to use a concluding transition word, and I'm going to provide a concluding sentence, much like my answer. If your answer and your conclusion don't look and sound similar, you haven't come full circle. So as you can see, it is very, very formatted. You do this first, then you do this second, then you do this third, etc., etc. But the new component you're getting this year in 10th grade is this thought bubble. So let's take a look at the bigger picture. So for those of you that are perhaps more visual and you need to see it more visually, in other words, here is the process of the constructing. I underlined the prompt's verb. I dissected the prompt, follow the arrows. I answer the question using words from the prompt itself. I have a transition word. I cite my evidence. I tell my reader what this evidence shows. I give a thought bubble based on what I just cited. I'm going to do it all over again. I transition. I cite my evidence. What does this cited evidence show? My thought bubble based on the line I just cited. Transition word, and again, I conclude almost exactly how I stated my answer. Here are your thought bubbles. So please follow along carefully here. For your fiction thought bubble, now we're in fiction right now, that's what we start with. You can choose to discuss any of the following as long as it is relevant to what you are discussing in your constructed response. Remember, thought bubbles come right after you explain your cited evidence. So right after that line, this line from the text shows, blah, 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 your next sentence is going to be the thought bubble. And remember, it is further explaining or provides deeper analysis to your writing. So that line you just cited told me what it shows. Now you're going to go deeper. So here is what I call fiction thought bubble menu. You can choose from mood, repetition, tone, diction, imagery, foreshadowing, figurative language, inferences, ironies, conflicts. This is what I call all the Englishy stuff. So let's say I just cited from the text and I said, on page 57 of the text, Johnny states, blah, 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 blah. Then I would go right in to say, this line from the text shows that Johnny is feeling frustrated. Here comes my new part, the thought bubble. I know the line I just cited was, Johnny said, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this line from the text shows, what can I pull in? So based on that line on page 57 I just said about Johnny, what can I say? Okay, I'm going to pick from my menu, tone. Okay, or mood. This line reveals that Johnny's mood is one of frustration, or this creates a confusing mood for the reader, or diction, author's word choice. I could say the use of the word blah, 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 blah in the text creates an eerie mood for the reader. Or the use of imagery in this line creates a visual picture for the reader. Or this line from the text could possibly foreshadow bad things to come. Or through the use of simile, blah, 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 blah. Or this section of the text can create conflicts, or it is ironic because. So whatever line you just cited from the text, after you explain to me what that line shows, you need to look at your menu here and say, okay, which one of these menu items can I pull in based on that line I just cited? Finally, please see the student sample constructed response in the constructed response folder in Schoology. You will see on page 2 of this constructed response packet is a constructed response written by a student, and it is asking you to highlight or color or whatever the different sections of the constructed response. So it'll tell you, for example, highlight the answer in red. Well, we know the very first part of a constructed is the answer. Then it says to highlight your transition words in a certain color. Then it says to highlight your cited evidence and explanation of what it shows in a certain color. Then it says to highlight your thought bubbles in a certain color. So basically, at the end of it all, you have a color-coded format that's going to help you. So for those of you online, again, on page 2 of your constructed response format packet, you're going to see that sample student constructed response that's giving you the directions telling you what color to highlight what thing. So however it is that you want to do that. Or create your own kind of key. You know, however you want to do it, it'll be very, very helpful because remember, you are going to refer to this all year as kind of like your quote cheat sheet of sorts. All right, so that is it in terms of walking you through step by step. Everything I just went over is in your format packet in Schoology in your constructed response folder.